With the release of update 0.5.0, money has become a lot more important in Deadside. This update has also made it a lot harder to farm up a bunch of money quickly, so in this guide I will show you the best ways to farm up a ton of money in Deadside. Now, there are a lot of ways to make money. Some are a lot harder than others, so in this guide we'll be starting with the low risk methods and ending with the high risk methods. The lower the risk, the easier it should be for a new player, and these low-risk routes typically avoid PvP, and any AI you do encounter should be relatively low difficulty. Our first and most simple method is stash hunting. For this you will need two items, a bearing finder and a shovel. There are two ways to make a bearing finder. The easiest is to combine a walkie-talkie with a wire. If you already have the supporter pack for the game, you will spawn with a walkie-talkie already, so all you really need to do is find a wire in an industrial area, which is pretty easy. If you don't have the supporter pack, you can either kill someone who does and take their walkie, or you can combine a broken walkie-talkie with an electronic component and a wire, which will give you a bearing finder. The shovel will spawn around the world in industrial and military areas. If you're already searching for a wire, there's a good chance you will also find a shovel. If you don't get one, you can just buy one at the safe zone for 2.5k. You will make your money back on that investment pretty quickly. So, you have your bearing finder and the shovel. Now you need to run around the map and search for some stashes. You can do this anywhere on the map, although an area without structures would be best. Every 50 to 100 meters, turn on your bearing finder and spin around in a circle, and see if you get any hits. When you do get a hit, the light on your bearing finder will turn on and it will make a noise. The frequency of the light and the frequency of the beeping will tell you how close you are to the stash. Once the light is solid and the beeping becomes a solid tone, you are standing on it, so take out your shovel and start digging. If you did everything correctly, you will have your first stash. Now, inside of the stash are a few guaranteed rewards. First is an emergency beacon. These sell for 3.1k each, and if you combine this emergency beacon with a wire and burlap, you can craft a respawn beacon, which will sell for 4k. Or you could just use the respawn beacon as a hidden respawn location, it's up to you, although you can only have one on the map at a time. You will always get two industrial loot spawns. These are things like electronic components, spare parts, batteries, car batteries, that sort of thing. You will always get some weapon repair tools. They can either be tier 1 or tier 2. The tier 1 will sell for 800 and the tier 2 for 1800. If you combine these tools with weapon parts, you can turn them into weapon repair kits. These can repair your weapons, or sell for a good amount to a trader. Tier 1 kits go for 1.5k, and Tier 2 for 3.2k. Sometimes you will get a Berta M9 or a C1911, both only sell for 400, so it might not even be worth picking those up. You will always get some extra ammo, which you can't really sell unless you have 100, but you can sometimes get 50 BMG, VG25s, and even grenades. If you're extremely lucky, you can possibly get 6 VG25s and 2 F1 grenades in a single box, but that is incredibly unlikely, so don't count on it. So, all in all, an average stash will net you around 4 to 7k. But you can easily raise those margins if you use the items you get to craft better items, like weapon repair kits or respawn beacons. And if you do this and get really lucky with your stash drops, you can in theory make over 15k from a single stash, but again, that's pretty unlikely. Still, 4 to 7k on its own is not bad at all, especially if you dig up multiple stashes on a single run. 5 stashes will earn you around 20 to 35k, which is more than you'll usually get from an epic mission reward. That's enough money to possibly buy a Grom or an assault vest, so it's not bad at all, especially considering that this method has basically no risk. You can do this anywhere on the map, away from both players and AI, so you can just walk around and do this for hours as long as you don't get bored. So if you're looking for something to do in Deadside while watching YouTube, this might be it. Our next method is detonator farming. This is a radio detonator, and it sells for 1950, which is a lot for a single item. But what makes this special is just how easy it is to craft them, and craft a lot of them. All you need to craft a detonator is one spare part and one electronic component. So, in order to farm detonators, we will need to farm these two items. You can do this pretty much at any industrial or military area on the map. I've marked them all down here. In these areas, you can pretty easily find both electronic components and spare parts. These areas also spawn some items that you can disassemble into spare parts or electronic components, so you'll want to keep an eye out for them as well. Broken flashlights will disassemble into spare parts, and unless you plan on making a working flashlight with these, which I don't know why you would, it's always worth to disassemble them into spare parts. The spare parts on their own actually sell more than the flashlights, so just go ahead and disassemble those when you see them. Drills will disassemble into 2 spare parts, but only do this if you have more electronic components than you have spare parts, because the drill itself sells for 2.5k. So unless you have 2 electronic components on hand and no spare parts to combine them with, just sell the drill. Broken walkie-talkies will disassemble into 1 electronic component, which is pretty much always worth doing, and circular saws will disassemble into 2 spare parts and 1 electronic component, and since the circular saw only sells for 1.25k now, it is literally always worth it to disassemble a circular saw, so that you can make a radio detonator out of the parts and sell it for 1.95k instead of 1.25k. While you are also looking around for these electronic components and spare parts, keep an eye out for watches, spark plugs, batteries, cigarettes, medicaments, rubbing alcohol, and machine oil. These all spawn around the same areas as electronic components and spare parts, and they sell for a decent bit of money, especially if you stack up a bunch of them, so if you have extra room, there's no reason not to grab these items. Right, I hope I haven't overloaded your brain so far, because now we're going to get into where you can actually find these electronic components and spare parts. Now, I know I've already shown you this map, but my personal favorite route is from South Safe Zone to West Lighthouse. This route has a ton of industrial spawns, 2 VSD spawns, a weapon optic spawn, and a campsite to find food and water, and it's relatively low risk. You won't see players often running around here. So the run goes like this. You start from South Safe Zone to Barragavoy. Run and check the first VSD spawn, which is on top of this building, on top of this ledge. Then I run through all of these garages, and this is a super profitable spot. From there I run to Luzerne, and while I'm running during this route, I'm always going to be using a bearing finder to see if there's any stashes I can grab along the way. After Luzerne, I run to this campsite for some food and water, and sometimes an extra gun. After the campsite, we run to the West Lighthouse, and there's a bunch of spawns here, so check each building pretty carefully. And at the top of the lighthouse is a VSD spawn and a weapon optic spawn, so that's worth checking as well. And now we run the entire route backwards, all the way back to Safe Zone, checking pretty much all the same spawns. And finally, you're back in the Safe Zone and you can start selling your items. After running this route a few times in Update 0.5.0, my average profit per run was around 50k, which is huge considering that each run took pretty much 30 minutes, which is not very long considering that's the same amount it would take to do, I don't know, an epic mission, hard mission. And these runs aren't that hard, you kinda just do them. This run does have a little bit more risk compared to just stash hunting, but compared to everything else I'm going to talk about in this guide, it is pretty easy, and a new player shouldn't have much of a problem here. So I highly recommend this route if you're new, or if you just don't want to get into some crazy PvP or PvE and just want some quick money. So for our next method of money farming, we have mission farming, and this is pretty simple. You spawn with nothing at a town near a basic mission. Usually an easy or a medium mission, maybe even a harder epic mission if you are more experienced with the game. You find a basic weapon in the town you spawn at, and then take it to the mission. To complete the mission, all you have to do is kill all of the AI in the area. Once they're all dead, you will get a marked reward crate. Pretty simple stuff. The higher tier the mission, the more difficult this will be, but the rewards will be better. And this is a lot higher risk than the 2 previous methods we just talked about. Not only do you have to deal with a ton of AI, but you almost certainly have to deal with some PvP as well. For all these reasons, I recommend you stick to medium missions. These missions aren't that hard, but they give much better rewards than an easy mission. Easy missions honestly aren't really worth your time. It is possible, although a bit rare, to get high tier items out of a medium mission reward. You're not going to get one every time, but eventually if you keep grinding these missions, you'll start getting some pretty good guns and maybe even some decent armor. This is a relatively well-known method, so I'm going to move on. If you want more information about missions and where they spawn, I'll leave this map made by Jim the Coffee Guy in the description. It's a pretty good map, it has a lot of details on pretty much every mission and what each area looks like, so if you're relatively new, this will be very useful for you. Okay, so now we're moving into high-risk territory, so if you're relatively new or inexperienced when it comes to PvP or PvE, I wouldn't recommend you try these methods first. Stick with the first 3. But if you're feeling more confident, let's talk about locked crate farming. Locked crates are a special type of crate that can only be found in 3 areas. A small amount can rarely spawn in the South Military Base and the North Radar Base, but a large amount commonly spawns in the underground bunker. These locked crates are extremely profitable. They will always give you some type of rare weapon, usually with a unique skin, that you can't get anywhere else. You can only get these skins from locked crates. The weapons that you will get will cost anywhere from 30 to 175k if you get an M99, so we're already getting a ton of value out of these boxes just from the weapons alone. But these boxes also spawn a bunch of tier 2 weapon repair kits, as well as repair kit tools. Each tier 2 repair kit sells for 3.2k, so you can expect to make around 12k from a single box just on the repair kits alone. These boxes also spawn rare ammo and grenades, which is useful too. So if you're willing to sell some weapons that you get from these crates, it's not unreasonable to get around 20k per locked crate, which is very, very high. That's basically a mission reward per locked crate open. But here's the catch. You need a red key in order to open a locked crate. There are 2 ways to get red keys. The first, but the slowest, is to farm military AI at military bases or at missions. If you check the pockets of their shirts, there's a small chance that they will be carrying a red key. The more consistent way is to get heli crash rewards. Each heli reward will have at least 1 key with a maximum of 3 in a single reward. The heli reward will also have some other high tier loot of course, like meds, weapons, helmets, optics, and all those other items. Heli crashes are risky though. The guards are extremely deadly, and this event is typically contested by other players. If you have a teammate though, this event will be a lot easier. One person can aggro the guards and bait them far away, while you or your teammate grabs the reward while the heli guards aren't looking. You can even do this with no gear at all, just as a fresh spawn, with a little bit of luck. So, lots of risk involved with this method, from the heli farming to running into bunker with keys, but if you can pull it off, you will have tons of high tier weapons and a bunch of cash as well. So, I hope you found this guide helpful. If you did, I would appreciate if you gave this video a like. I will be making a lot more guides for Update 0.5.0, like a guide for new convoys, for boats, for getting weapon optics, and probably even more stuff. So if that sounds interesting to you, consider subscribing to the channel so that you don't miss those guides when they come out. That's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for watching.